from one government that's corrupt to another. You know, I've mentioned 2 or 3 times Gerald Celente, how he was so fed up after losing his money at John Corzine's MF Global. He was so furious and so pissed off. He said, I'm just going to leave the damn country. I can't take it anymore. So he said, I went around to a lot of different countries thinking I'd find one ultimately that I said, you know what, this will work. And he said, you know what I found? Every country I went to has this thing called government. And since there's politicians there, there's corruption. Where there's politicians, there's corruption. And everywhere I went had the same things happening to more or less or some extent, compared to what's happening in the U.S. government. So some things here might be worse than over there. Some things over there might be worse than here, whatever. But the bottom line is the same crap that happens here happens there. Worse, better in some instances, whatever. So I've mentioned recently how Brazil, one of many countries whose dollar has been completely crapped on compared to our dollar. And if you owned precious metals and Brazilian dollars, you'd be sitting kind of pretty. Same thing can be said for Venezuela and numerous other countries. But it says, again, zero hedge, this is how a coup starts. Brazil President Defiant as impeachment vote set for April. Brazil is being governed by a joke. Political commentator Joséas de Souza says, it's turned into an aspiring banana republic. Where have I heard that term before? In which country have we heard that about? USA. What was already an unimaginable bad situation took a decisive turn for the worse this week in Brazil when embattled President Dilma Rousseff, fearing that her mentor Luis Lula da Silva was about to be arrested on corruption charges, appointed the former president to a ministerial position. Oh, you're about to get locked up? You're about to nail you? I'll just give you a ministerial position because then you can claim government powers that you can't be subpoenaed or messed with. The opposition was already at their wits' end with Rousseff, whose opponents say doctored the fiscal books in 2014. Get used to hearing cooking the books, doctoring the books, etc. Not just banking and financial institutions, but governments cooking the books. And who has presided over a catastrophic decline in the country's economy. Thus far, Rousseff has managed to dodge an impeachment bid spearheaded by House Speaker Eduardo Cunha, but after Senator Delcidio do Amaral gave damaging testimony in a plea deal, and after Lula was detained earlier this month, it became clear that sooner or later, the 2-year-old car wash probe would eventually dead end at the presidential palace doors. Kind of like all of ours dead end at the White House. White House, executive branch, I'm going to put Eric Holder in charge. Fast and Furious scandal, don't look at it. Anything else, don't look at it. Banking criminals, don't look at them. John Corzine, MF Global, don't look at them. Oh, something actually made it to court. My hand-picked federal judge, dismiss that case. Case dismissed. Thanks, appreciate that. Rather than risk that, Rousseff decided instead to effectively eliminate the possibility that Lula would ever be prosecuted by giving him a position in her cabinet. That affords him special privileges under the law and makes it all but impossible for anyone to prosecute him except for the High Court. Kind of like in America, High Court, Supreme Court. 5-4 ruling, 5-4 ruling, 5-4 ruling, 5-4 ruling. And now one of the most conservative judges is dead. They got to reappoint one now. So now it will be 5-4 ruling the other way. Constitutional right to have and bear arms. 5-4 ruling, you can't own a gun anymore. You got a problem? Brutality, government? Yep. 5-4 ruling. Nope, we don't see anything here. Supreme Court, right. And these politicians think that the people will just stand there and take it forever. Like they're not going to come to the conclusion one day that we are so screwed, I have to now break the law and start murdering some of these people. All I say is go look at history. That's exactly what history says will happen if the rule of law is not restored. And since it can't be restored, not that it won't, it can't be restored. Because if it is restored, the daisy chain of people who would be brought up on criminal charges, and then this one would rat that one out, and this one plea bargain, you would see everything demolished as far as all these people. They would all, the chain of corruption and fraud would be so massive, it'd be unbelievable. And they're not going to rat each other out. So it can't happen. The only way it can happen is through a revolution. And right now, the people are trying a peaceful revolution by trying to get Trump in there, in office. But I don't think it's going to happen. It was an absurdly transparent move, and everyone would have seen through it anyway, but Judge Sergio Moro, who was conducting the car wash probe, decided to make sure that there would be no doubt in the public's mind about what was really going on, and so he tapped Rousseff's phone and released some 50 recordings, at least one of which found Rousseff promising to send Lula his ministerial papers immediately, quote, in case of necessity. That was almost surely a reference to the fact that Lula could use the papers as a kind of get-out-of-jail-free card if anyone tried to arrest him before he could be sworn in. And make no mistake, Moro was probably going to arrest him. Well, the tapes led to mass street protests for all intents and purposes, which still are going on, as pro-government rallies were planned for Friday, which was actually, this Friday. Following a swearing-in ceremony for Lula that was made comically absurd by the fact that although he's technically a minister now, he can't actually do anything because there are 20 injunctions in federal courts and 10 in the Supreme Court against him taking office. Here are a few images that should give you a fairly good idea of what the mood is in the streets right now. And while this is, that's Brazil. But hold on, is Brazil some kind of dirt bag, cheap third world country? No. Yeah, there's some poor parts of Brazil. But you didn't used to see this stuff. And for people to think that nothing like this will ever happen in America, you might be able to find some videos right now of similar things already happening in America, actually. But, in case you're wondering, take a little gander at some of these very upset people. And I know my Spanish-speaking friends, they love to go out and bang pots and pans. Get out, you bum politicians. And that's what they did last time. But this guy got kicked out, and this other lady takes over, and she hires him. So what does that tell you? You can't vote your way out. Now I start to understand when I was reading the cycles of government. I'm going to pause this for a second because I got to read you a section of this. All right, I remember doing a video on this literally 2 to 3 times, different videos, but I felt like every great once in a while I got to bring it back up. But it's actually quite short. The cycles of government. This is how you can finally see like everything really is just a cycle, including types and forms of government. Democracy, oligarchy, rule by the many, rule by the king, you can see, because when people realize I can't vote my way out of this, when they finally realize, oh my God, I can't vote my way out, it's time for a different type of government to take effect. And that's one where a single person rises as the voice of reason. Everybody stands behind that person, and we will do anything that person says because he is definitely for the people, and we love him. And then they become the king. And the king works out great for a while. Until his kids take over, and then the kids' kids take over. They weren't around when all the chaos was there. All they know is I'm a big shot. I'm living in the palace. And they start to get a little bit corrupt, and right, and then the cycle starts over. We can't have you ruling us. We need to have multiple people voting and making decisions. You're making terrible decisions. Okay, we'll have a Senate, and then the Senate will help vote, and then it starts over again. So I just want to read you this. The cyclos, which is ancient Greek, or cycle, is a term used by some classical Greek authors to describe what they saw as the political cycle of governments in a society. It was roughly based, this is from WikiLeaks, by the way, it was roughly based on the history of Greek city-states in the same period. The concept of the cyclos is first elaborated in Plato's Republic, chapters 8 and 9, I believe. Polybius called it the anacyclos, or anacyclosis. Okay. According to Polybius, who has the most fully developed version of the cycle, it rotates through the three basic forms of governments: democracy, aristocracy, and monarchy, and the three degenerate forms of each of these governments, which is ochlocracy, oligarchy, and tyranny. Originally, society is in anarchy, but the strongest figure emerges and sets up a monarchy. The monarch's descendants, who because of their family's power lack virtue, becomes despots, and the monarchy degenerates into a tyranny. Because of the excess of the ruler, the tyranny is overthrown by the leading citizens of the state, who set up an aristocracy. They too quickly forget about virtue, and the state becomes an oligarchy. These oligarchs are overthrown by the people, who set up a democracy. Democracy soon becomes corrupt and degenerates into mob rule, beginning the cycle anew. Plato and Aristotle have somewhat different beliefs. Plato only sees 5 forms of government. Aristotle believes the cycle begins with monarchy and ends in anarchy, but that it does not start anew. He also refers to democracy as the degenerate form of rule by the many, and calls the virtuous form politia, which is often translated as constitutional democracy. Machiavelli, writing during the Renaissance, appeared to have adopted Polybius' version of the cycle. Machiavelli's adoption of anacyclosis can be seen in Book 1, Chapter 2 of his Discourses in Livy. All the philosophers believed that this cycling was harmful. The transitions would often be accompanied by violence and turmoil. Right? Violence, turmoil, rioting, okay. And a good part of the cycle would be spent with the degenerate forms of government, i.e., democracy. Aristotle gave a number of options as to how the cycle could be halted or slowed. And he says, even the most, and I agree, I remember this, I agree with these, it's great. Even the most minor changes to basic laws and constitutions must be opposed, because over time, the small changes will add up to complete transformation. Yes or no, has your constitution changed greatly since the time of the founding fathers? In aristocracies and democracies, the tenure of rulers must be kept very short to prevent them from becoming despots. External threats. This is one of my favorites. External threats, real or imagined, preserve internal peace. The 3 government basic systems can be blended into one, taking the best elements of each. If any one individual gains too much power, be it political, monetary, or military, he should be banished from the polls. Judges and magistrates must never accept money to make decisions. in America, the middle class must be large. And as I showed you the other day, we're shrinking greatly. And finally, the most important to Aristotle in preserving a constitution is education. This might actually be my favorite. If all the citizens are aware of the law, history, and the Constitution, they will endeavor to maintain a good government. But if the citizens are not aware of the law, not aware of history, and not aware of the Constitution, or what rights it gives them, not too good now, is it? So I wanted to just share that with you because every time I think about these things and the cycles of government, that comes back to me so powerfully. So once again, you have another, it doesn't matter where you're at on the planet. Is there a thing called a country? Yes. Is there a government in the country? Yes. Are there politicians in that country? Yes. If it looks like a duck, walks like a duck, and quacks like a duck, it's a duck. In other words, if it's got a government and politicians, it's got fraud, corruption, and everything else. Doesn't matter if it's America, over in the UK, or south of us, southern part of the hemisphere, Brazil. And you can take Venezuela and any other one too with you. She makes, I'm the new president. Good, we're going after the old president for fraud and corruption. Nope, I'm going to put him in my cabinet, so you can't do that. It's what they do. This is why cycles of government keep repeating. It's like the sun up, sun's back down. Up, sun's up, sun's back down. And so imagine morning time, noon, nighttime, or, sundown, dusk, middle of the night, back to morning. Like imagine if that's how quick these cycles happened. You'd be able to sit here and see it and say with absolute certainty, because it happened so fast to you since you live, thousands of years, let's say, you would look back and say, oh, I can see this coming from a mile away. I know what happens next. It's going to be chaos and anarchy. Hold on, wait, let me check my history book. You guys are in democracy mode, right? Democracy mode? Yeah. Oh, the last 15 of those ended. You seriously betting against me right now? Well, yeah, I'm betting against you. This is America, man. It's not going to happen in America. We've got democracy and a Supreme Court and handpicked, appointed. Oh, you don't get to vote for the most important one? No, they're handpicked. Oh. Handpicked by the guy that they're supposed to have checks and balances against. So, anyways, another day, another fraudulent government exposed.